It doesn't look like much, but I spent hours on this map in Red Faction. The glass effects are still really nice and satisfying. But this game isn't known for its glass effects. It's known for the GeoMod engine. This would let you destroy whatever you wanted. For example, this blew me away, and the walls. I'd spend hours carving out holes, caves and tunnels on this map. I think there was a limit to how many holes you could make. The game only supported up to 32 megabytes of RAM after all. Just imagine what it could do with today's gigabytes. Its last party trick was to recognise when something was no longer being held up, at which point it would make it drop to the floor in a realistic fashion. A sort of realistic fashion. Not bad for 2001. The second game was kind of the same, but wasn't quite so good. But then came Red Faction Guerilla. Sadly, you can't blow holes through the ground anymore, nor the cliffs. But watch this. I still don't know how they managed it, but they designed each building with proper physics. You can smash bits off, and once you've done enough damage to the structure, it will collapse under its own weight. This was all managed on the Xbox 360 generation of consoles. Again, imagine what could be done with it now on modern computers. Sadly, the company made a sequel that wasn't quite so good, and then went bankrupt. What a shame, because Red Faction Guerilla showed the series' potential. I've played it through several times now, despite it having a bland world design, boring characters, repetitive, dull and infuriating missions. Don't get me wrong, it tries its best to put me off, but the destruction is that good that I return to it, again and again. This video will show the destruction, I promise. But I also have to show you the friendly AI, because I swear they've gotten stupider since I last played it. They've gone from being useless to actually being quite offensive, and I hate them. Wait for it. If it wasn't so infuriating, it would be funny. They make a beeline for you, especially if you're trying to get out of a combat environment. They'll be sure to block your escape and to make your experience as unpleasant as possible. You know in GTA how people would pull out in front of you if you were trying to get away from the police? It felt like some kind of conspiracy. But this game is worse than that, because they're supposed to help me. I'm their saviour, the one who fights for their rights, starting an uprising on Mars. Also, it penalises you if they die, but sometimes it's still worth it just to see them go up in a fiery mess. If you're waiting for your 5-star police wanted level to disappear, you might try hiding somewhere, only for them to run to your position and to start firing, alerting all guards within a mile of your whereabouts. You'll try to destroy an enemy base, but they'll spawn to assist you by standing exactly where you plant your explosives. Sure enough, they'll die and it will penalise your score and set your progress in the game back. Here I am, making use of cover between firing rockets at the bad guys. My teammates come along, block my vision, then stand in front of my gun, then pretty much immediately die and undo the progress I made from getting into the fight in the first place. It's enough to make you wish them harm. But don't worry, they do that enough to each other. The sheer lack of empathy some of the drivers showed made me pity the victims, as they were run over and over again by their fellow man. I'm cold, but some of these people's hearts are downright frozen. It can't be easy to program AI to work in a world where everything can be destroyed. I thought this guy was trying to cross a bridge that no longer existed, so I moved my truck out of the way, only to discover that he was just trying to ram my vehicle off the road all along. Sometimes a bridge will be perfectly fine, but they'll suddenly decide to end it all, right there, right then. So many suicidal tendencies. There's even a mission where you have to save them all from a barrage of artillery. And by save, I mean you run up to them and tell them to get out of there, because they haven't figured that out just yet. They're all standing around indestructible buildings, waiting for the inevitable to happen. There's one who thinks that being upstairs in this house is a good idea. I tried it twice, and both times him being killed failed the mission. So I was all like, screw it, I'll just make a YouTube video about it instead. Now here I am. Right, enough of the NPCs, time to get onto the destruction. I've deliberately kept the destruction relatively subdued so far. Don't worry, it gets bigger. But I think there's something nice about small scale stuff as well. It really lets you appreciate how much detail there is in every post and sign. Things don't just break, they fragment, they bend. Small chunks fall off to give the impression that they're still trying to put up some resistance against your ridiculous sledgehammer. Signs splinter. Not sure where they got the wood for it, but whatever. There's something so meaty about each and every swing of your hammer. Unlike most games, your melee attack in this game isn't just a mere last resort in desperate moments. It's a formidable weapon in its own right, and more than capable of razing medium-sized structures to the ground in a dozen smacks or so. Not meaning to be a killjoy, but ramming each of these barriers in the same spot made them break in the same way. So a bit like in the game Control, I do think the breakable spots in Red Faction are pre-designed. But it doesn't matter. There are enough of them that it took this sort of testing to discover that. Before this point I had done 2 whole playthroughs of the game without knowing, plus the initial breakage is only part of the fun. Where this game really shines is when the destruction leads to yet more destruction. A tower falling over will demolish anything in its path. A collapsing billboard will hammer itself into the ground until there's nothing left but small fragments. But just because something's collapsing doesn't mean it's given up completely. Check out this tower here, which gets awkwardly lodged in a hard to reach spot. I've had buildings abruptly stop mid-collapse, becoming stable again, albeit a bit shorter than before. Or how about this building? The roof of which remains intact, then after some more smashing, neatly breaks in 2. It just makes you want to smack it again, doesn't it? And this destruction does at points take me by surprise, as cover that would usually be my friend decides to betray me. You can't beat a good bridge to test the physics in this game. As if you hadn't already noticed, structures in this game collapse once enough of their supports have been knocked away, just as they would in real life. The bridges in this game I'd say are reassuringly strong. You can demolish a good section of it and it will still remain standing. But they always fall eventually. I don't think that will ever get old. Look at how this once solid surface pretty much liquidates and then flows down this hill. It's next gen stuff, but last gen. And then there's this beast of a bridge, which is perhaps out of our league for now, but will still lightly graze it. The one thing that technology can't quite do yet is buildings large enough to have a good fight inside. There's something undeniably exhilarating about being in a building as it's getting chunks blown out of it. Perhaps the best example of which I had here. There's clearly potential for this on a larger scale. Suddenly, you don't just have to worry about enemies, but also about flying rocks and dangerous holes opening up beneath you. Later on in the game, there are these apartment blocks, but they're far too claustrophobic to house any meaningful fight. And it seems like it's pushing the engine too far, as sometimes, rather than collapsing spectacularly, entire buildings would simply disappear instead. What does impress me is how it remembers the stuff you've destroyed. You don't come back 5 minutes later to find it all magically rebuilt. It's the opposite, in fact. After dozens of hours, I'd return to earlier zones only to still find parts destroyed, serving as reminders that I had been there before. And I'm not sure, but sometimes I'd find foundations of a new building where I thought I had destroyed an old one previously. So maybe there's some sort of world regeneration going on, but I'm not sure. Similar to the destruction model itself, it's probably flawed, but you'd have to really be looking to notice. And I love watching the largest buildings eventually succumbing to their damage, collapsing into a horrible, horrible, wonderful mess that someone somewhere will have to clean up. Since this is what you're here for, I'll just show a few of my favourite examples of this before moving on. Sometimes they'll tease you by looking like they're not ready to fall just yet. But then they're all like, surprise! All things considered, I'm impressed by how infrequently it got the physics wrong. Get enough speed in some of the bigger vehicles and you can carve your way all the way through a building. Don't expect to know what's going on. Turns out visibility is poor when you're ramming through layer upon layer of concrete. The biggest vehicles are the walkers, which are effectively giant battle bots that can walk through structures without sustaining any damage at all. Your time with these things is limited, as they do feel like they're making your already overpowered character just that little bit more overpowered again. The rocket launcher deserves some praise. It's got a range and accuracy that just isn't fair on the enemies. There's one mission where you have to run about a quarry, blowing up loudspeakers. But if you have a rocket launcher, you can just stand at the beginning and blow them all up from there. Some might call this unbalanced, but I like it. While I find a lot of the missions annoying, I did like this one where you shoot at enemy vehicles as they approach. I like it because the rocket launcher is so overpowered, you only spend a fraction of your time shooting them. The rest you can spend smashing up passing structures, improving your score faster than you can at any other point in game. Now, I don't have problems, but I also like how when the enemies in gun turrets get struck, their bodies flail about like a tube man. It's always fun to chuck sticky grenades at people and to watch them panic and run about. In fact, as a child, I spent hours having fun with that in the original game as well. Not that your hammer is any slouch, but if you're in a big stompy robot and hit them in just the right way, you can really make enemies go flying. Anyway, I ran about, I upgraded my stuff, and I'm finally strong enough to take down the big bridge. These supports are one of just a few structures in game that seem impervious to normal attacks, thus needing the dissolver gun that you get later on. I preferred the smaller ones. Sometimes, all these destruction elements come together and it really makes the Red Faction experience special. So while the company that made it has since dedicated themselves to Saints Row, the Red Faction name has been sold to Nordic Games, who re-released the game last year as the Puntastic Remastered Edition. If I'm honest, I can't see any differences with it, but it's great that they've identified Guerilla as the game that deserved their effort the most, and it keeps the possibility of a sequel alive, if the publisher can keep off 8chan for long enough to make it happen. For destruction, I give this game 10 out of 10. If you like explosions, I have one covering the ones in Red Faction Guerilla just here. There might also be a bit of destruction.